Okay, welcome to the Attic Static Podcast, where we take your calls, answer your questions about just about anything. I'm Ray.
I'm Adam.
Gary here.
I'm Johnny.
And I am Ed.
So if you want to give us a call, we're happy to take your questions. The number is 386-956-0754. Or jump on the live feed on YouTube at Attic Static. Just look up Attic Static on YouTube. And I think today, with a little bit of icebreaker we're going to do here, I'm going to start. Wayne, Noah, and I just went to New Hampshire for a couple of days. So we went to visit some friends who retired a few years ago. They invited us up there just to go and hang out. So we went up Tuesday morning. It was about a 5-hour drive. We spent 3 days hiking, biking, playing pickleball, as usual. What did we do here? I got a few things here. We went out in the lake in the kayaks and paddle boards. We had Thai food. We had Mexican food. We sat out on the deck in a really dark sky in their backyard and watched the Perseid meteor shower. Thursday night, it wasn't quite the peak, but it was cool. Killed a wasp nest. Actually, we didn't. We picked up a wasp nest and moved it to the backyard and put it out in the woods so we didn't have to kill them all.
That was so nice.
So we did that. We fixed their fireplace or showed them how to use their fireplace pilot light. We fixed the lock on their door that they hadn't figured out to use yet. So they just moved into this house and they haven't figured out all this stuff yet. So it was a big house, easily over 3,000 square feet, had an 11-zone baseboard heating system.
Nice.
And they're desperately trying to figure out how to lower all their costs. So I'm going to bleed this over into a little topic here. So the one question they have is, what are they going to do about that, right? They've got oil heat. They don't want oil, high carbon footprint. Solar panels being installed on the roof while we were there, so we got to watch them for 3 days, putting up the racks and doing all that stuff. But the whole time we talked about this, how are they going to reduce their bills? How are they going to get rid of oil in the house? And I'm looking at Johnny here, right? Because they have everything is relatively new, but they've got this beat up old oil burning furnace, in the basement hooked up to everything and making hot water.
So it is circulating hot water.
Yeah, circulating hot water.
Not steam.
Not steam, and no radiators, none of that stuff. So that's the question to you, Johnny. What do you do?
So because it's the quickest answer is because it's circulating hot water, I would say the new style high efficiency combo boiler. And then the only issue with that is you'd have to have given me what's the BTU of the existing furnace.
Can you explain what a combo boiler is?
Yeah.
So the furnace industry, I guess, has been evolving, and the springboard to what I'm about to explain were the tankless water heaters. So in the United States, they're always popular in Europe, but they have trickled down into the United States. And a lot of people don't know that you could buy a box probably 5 times the size, deep, and well, maybe not that. Well, let's give a better. What would you say, Ray? 18 or 24 by 18 would be a typical tankless. No, a tankless water heater.
Yeah, sticking out about 6-8 inches from the wall.
If you could
hang
imagine
it like
that,
a picture frame.
Yeah, they hang it on the wall, and then you run your gas, you run your in and your out water to it, and you no longer house 50, 75, 100 gallons of water on reserve. That obviously, while you're away from home, this thing is losing temperature, reheating, losing temperature, reheating. And then if you have only one bathroom and let's say 5 sisters, like my cousin's husband, by the time he got to his bath, he had no hot water. Everyone has experienced that. A tankless hot water heater makes hot water on demand. And they use that design, and they added a whole other section to the unit. And now you can get the hot water that just like Gary's makes. But instead of it having to fire up this big furnace part with multiple burners, it is a nice encapsulated burning mechanism with a very high efficiency heat exchange inside. And what it does is it makes hot water on demand for your heating in your home. The issue with that is that usually they're 1-to-1. So if they have 11 zones, I would have to know how large that boiler was. So for a 3,000 square foot home, I'm assuming that's somewhere around, if it's really old too, it's probably around 275 to 375,000 BTUs. So with that, most of the time you want to cascade these systems. So you would put one, they have communication systems, and then you just tie them together.
You'd have to have one on each zone?
No, not really. You're just taking the whole total. But if I knew the total and you know where the zones are compared to where the people live, then you would make the correct calculation.
Okay.
So you're not wasting it.
And just to clarify, the combination then is the ability to provide domestic hot water and heat the house.
Exactly.
One note on
you
the
mentioned
They're two different loops, though.
So you
in the
mentioned
same
gas,
one.
though. I'm assuming they don't have gas, so then it would be electric.
No, hold on. So they do have a propane tank outside that their fireplaces and their stove work off. So you could switch them to propane. The question is it better to be on oil or propane? But hold on, Ed had a question.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we were actually looking into getting the tankless water heater for our residential home. And the plumber we were working with had explained to us that we actually couldn't because all of our utilities in our basement are centrally located and that we needed to have the tankless water heater mounted on an external wall. And we didn't have that because all of our utilities were in the center of the basement. And he said, you'd have to change that and put your utilities by the external wall.
Well, all you would have to move is your water line.
Well, he said it would have to be mounted on the external wall.
So the heater has to have vent outside, right? Which is why he's saying that, right? But it doesn't mean you couldn't just plumb the water line, like Adam said, to that heater wherever it is.
And
Right.
external
It's an additional
wall,
cost.
just to clarify, it's the inside of the house, just an external wall. So if you
That's
got a
correct.
basement, it's
That's
typically on a block wall.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So back to, you said propane. What about electricity? I mean, you can these high efficiency tankless are electric as well.
No, they are. That's not an option when it comes to, in my opinion, keeping it
Cost effective.
cost effective.
What size solar array does he have? Is it enough to power the house and then some?
Actually, they didn't even know, but I can tell you in 1 second. It is, what is 25 times 400?
10.
24.
10,000. So it's a 10 megawatt system.
Yeah. So that's probably not going to have a lot extra unless there's only two people there and they're really power misers.
Correct. And that's what I told her. So it is going to only be two people there, but the system was rated roughly for the size of what they need for the house without doing anything different. So I told her, you probably won't have the access to do that. And from what I know, those tankless hot water heaters on electric are just electricity
They're brutal.
hogs, right?
They're brutal.
Yeah.
It's not an option.
Yeah.
But,
What size circuit do you need for that?
an
Needs
electric
serious
one?
amperage, huh?
Between 80 and 100 amps
Yeah.
just for that.
So that'll take half your panel.
Not to mention every time the thing turns on, the thing dim your lights. It's they're very hungry. But most of the manufacturers will make a natural gas unit that is very easily converted to propane.
Right. Right. That's what we did in the Poconos. We had two of
So
them.
that's what I would do. But more importantly, like a lot of the questions, the more specific information. What is the existing BTU? Is it? I'm assuming it's an 80% efficient unit. If you looked at it, did it have a big chimney sticking out of
Yep.
it? Right.
Yep.
So that's 80. The benefit is that if you're willing to pay the money, they go from 91, 93, 95, 97, 98% efficient. And the only variation, so that people understand, when you burn natural gas that efficiently, it condenses. So it just adds another condensate pump, and you have to pump that out. But the benefit of it is that, and I could give you examples, if that house had a very large chimney and built walls around it, and let's say it was in general space, when you convert the entire house to high efficiency, you get a 3-inch or 2-inch flue, which is Schedule 40 PVC. You just run it through, the rafters in the basement and out the side of the house with a little 45 down. And like we did with my brother's house, when we converted it, he gained all that chimney space, right? And it just happened to be in the middle of his kitchen. So now we were able to gut the whole kitchen, get rid of the chimney. And that was one of the plans that I had in the 3-family. When I converted the whole house, the 3-family chimney was about the size of this table. And it went through each floor.
And your hot water heater didn't use that same flue?
No, because I converted that.
Okay.
Yeah, so when
And
you
that
do the
stays in
whole
the basement.
Right,
Yeah.
stayed in the basement, right?
So wait, what did you convert the hot water heater to?
a tankless.
To tankless,
Yeah,
got it.
so that one had a 2-inch. It went right out. I put it on the side wall, small pipe coming out, and then my plan was when each apartment came empty, I would then add that space to the apartment. Unfortunately, or fortunately,
Sold the house.
In 15 years, I never had an empty apartment.
Oh, yeah.
So I never felt the need to do it, but we've done it, and that's one of the side benefits. And like I said, the older houses had very large built, and they usually went through right the center of the house.
Chimneys, yeah.
So let's go back to this question here. You described how a conversion to propane could be made. Why is that any better that's still a hydrocarbon? Is that more efficient? Is it cheaper? Why bother?
From oil? Well, one, oil, you need a distribution network, and the trucks have to come, drop it off. If you run out in the middle of the night, some of them, it's just another nuisance. Whereas if it's piped to your house,
Well, no, we're
Propane
talking
wouldn't be piped.
propane tanks. This is not natural gas. They're
yeah,
not-
but propane tanks have to be filled, right?
yes, the
Right. So
truck's
you
gotta
still
come.
have a
Right,
truck
but
coming to fill.
The propane system that I've seen, and I've seen in places, they have those sensors and stuff, and they call out, and it happens automatically. Whereas at least in this town, most of the oil, it's visual by the owner, and if you're not paying attention and it goes down, you're sort of out of luck if it happens in the middle of the night. So one of the things I've seen with propane is that they have those systems. I think I saw it in one of the houses in your house.
They have a little thing on them. But I know what you're talking about. Yes. It has a little.
So at least you
Wi-Fi
have
thing.
that. But I mean, to answer your question in reference to natural gas, I believe one of the benefits, if you could, I mean, there's money to be said about it. When you get up to around 98%, natural gas has been so cheap that, I think there's a case to be made that it's readily available, it's very cheap, and it doesn't cause you inconveniences.
Right. So natural gas is probably your best bet when you're more rural, like these places. It's propane or oil, right? That's the
Sure.
choice, and you got to look at the cost of your oil. If your companies have the remote sensing and all that kind
Well,
of stuff.
let
right?
me tell you one
Also-
particular. I apologize.
So hold on a second. You guys can walk through instead of tiptoeing. Go ahead. It's okay.
We have a live studio audience
Yeah,
today.
we have
If everyone out there can maybe keep it down just a little bit.
So
so Caitlin and
first,
I'll
Thank you
walk
all.
by. Yeah.
while they're situating themselves, I would just say that these are questions that sometimes pose. You sometimes need to think through them because there's a lot, as you can see just in the conversation, there's a lot of options. But I'll tell you my personal, and sometimes I'll answer it taking my personal thing in the head without telling everyone. But I'll take the time because of this little pause. I do not, and I have to say that I'll say it the right way. I hate oil gas. I hate how it smells.
Oil fuel.
Heating. I'm sorry. Oil heating is annoying. It has a lot more components. It smells. If you're working on it, it makes a little bit of a mess. There's a lot more prep work you have to do when you're working on it. It's annoying.
You also have a bit of an environmental hazard depending on what state you're in and when the house was built. You could have a buried oil tank.
Correct.
And if that leaks, which many of them do,
Yep.
that could be another $20,000-$30,000 to clean up if you're lucky and it didn't
right.
get into the groundwater.
So on
Easy.
that topic, I got an email today from a ex-coworker who was going through a leaky oil tank problem in North Jersey over the last couple of months. Testing, they found leaks, it's in the water, they're drilling, they're propping up the porch to be able to dig under the house, and she finally got the bill today. $32,000 is her share after insurance is paying for whatever else they're paying for.
Exactly.
Do you have a sense of the total bill or how much insurance covered?
I'd have to read
The
through
total
the
bill is
email.
$35,000.
But here's the thing: when she bought the house 20 years ago, they got a certificate that said tank was removed, everything's good, you're good, right?
Wow.
And then now they did a test or whatever when she was going to sell the house, and it's not so good. And that company that did the certificate doesn't exist, and she's still paying $32,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've
Oil has its issues, right? Now in this case, oil tanks in the basement. It's clean. It's pretty. It looks great.
I don't mean to put you with the numbers, but there is the calculation, right? For 1 BTU of each, oil wins.
Oil wins.
Oil wins. I get all that. But usually people will call me after 3 or 4 people have gone to their house and haven't been able to fix it. When they call me and it's an oil burn, I'm like, oh, gee. I just don't like them. So
That's why when I called you for mine,
Well-
you're like, oh, yeah, no
And
problem.
look, just because there's more BTUs per unit volume doesn't mean it's cheaper, right? The cost per
it's
BTU
much.
is
And I
very
could say
different.
when I moved into Market Street, it was oil. I was paying in 2005 $580 a month in oil because it was 3 floors, right? So then little by little, I went dividing them, but before I divided the 3, I converted all 3 floors, right? Before I switched for probably a whole season to natural gas, and it went down to $175. That's the variation. So I don't even use that as an option when I start to explain things. I don't like it. So, but it is in the conversation, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have that option.
Well,
We have a question about from a caller about the value of emergency standby generators. Anyone want to opine on that?
We have one. It's actually not one that's connected to our home, but it's actually one that you plug things into. So we actually bought that quite a while ago.
So this is not a standby generator. This is a portable generator
That is
that you
correct.
manually would fire up
And then
to
just plug the
power.
refrigerator into it?
Yeah, or just the basic needs. Yeah, refrigerator or whatever the basic needs.
Because you don't
are at
have
that
a
time.
sub panel.
No.
You just run extension
So
cords.
That's
right?
correct.
Right, and that's the simple, easy way to do
Simple,
it. Right?
easy.
If all you care about is your freezer and your fridge and
Just
a
the
couple
basic.
of
But I would
lights.
still
The
ask-
problem
I
is
agree. I
if
don't
you're
think
not
it's simple.
home when you lose power, maybe you lose some
Right,
food
but
in
I
the
would
freezer
also-
or
Right.
refrigerator, and if you're dependent on sump pumps to keep your basement dry, you could be out of luck there
and I
too.
think if there's a greater need, then maybe you need to evaluate maybe something different. But for us, there really isn't that much of a greater need. We've had instances where we've used it. I could probably just count on my hand those instances, and it's worked out and served its purpose.
But I would still ask if there's depth to the question. Why are they asking? Any thoughts on standalone generators? Because I want to do, but what?
Well, hopefully it's because, well, not hopefully, but it's probably because they lose power a lot.
Well,
So I think it depends on how often you're losing power.
So I'll bring that back because at the same place we were just visiting in New Hampshire, that was the other part of the conversation because they do lose power every once in a while. And they actually talked about getting a generator for the house.
Oh wait, they just moved in, and they're saying,
1 year ago.
okay, and in that year they've lost power several times.
3 times. But when they first moved in, they talked to the neighbor across the street and he said, oh, don't bother with the generator. We never lose power here. And then 3 times
So
in the past year.
the only thing that I would add, and if anyone does any type of research, you'll find out, and I'll explain. You're going to run into generators that are $800, and you're going to run into the same capacity generator that is $4,000, and more than likely it's going to say it's inverted. So an inverted generator actually cleans the power, converts it to DC, cleans it, and then
I
reconverts
thought
it back.
inverter just means it's quieter.
No.
Inverter means your take. That's why you need it for your solar panels, right? Because your solar panels generate DC power. You need an inverter to invert that power wave to AC.
Correct.
And
Right.
an inverter generator is also much quieter.
That's right. That's why
But-
all the generators that are inverters are quieter.
But
And
that's
like-
just
Johnny's gonna
that's
tell you
just
why.
the design,
Yeah.
right? But let's not. One thing has nothing to do with the other. So the key is why would you need that? All the modern TVs, not as much well, let's just say all the modern TVs. You're not supposed to put computerized equipment on these standalone non-inverter generators because the power quality is horrible. There's no other word for it. If you were to put an oscilloscope on it, it's nasty. So you just got to keep that into consideration. $800, yes, it'll get you through some pumps, refrigerators, stuff like that. But if it's gonna be a long outage and you have to start using different things, you want to spend the extra money for that. The noise attenuation is just a completely different thing. That they're much better made, and they're usually insulated and they're usually encapsulated. There's different things incorporated, but they're usually 2 times to 3 times the price.
So when we had the house in Piscataway and it was rented out and had people there, and that basement would flood once in a while, right? So we had the sump pumps in there, and I had a backup generator just like what Ed described, a portable one in the garage, plug in the extension cords and keep your freezer going. So instead of dealing with the sump pump problem, we just put a battery backup on the sump pump itself, right? So then it just stays on no matter what. And I just paid the $125 a year service for those guys to come out and check the batteries every year and clean it up, make sure it's fine, and just never think about it again.
They won't run for an extended outage, though. Those are typically good for 1 to 3 days.
Yeah, I've never had to use it, so I don't know.
But let's Ray, let's take an example that we did at Ray's house, and if he was to have the space to do it, we put a transfer switch. He has a automatic start standby generator.
Just like Ed's. Just like Ed's.
As long as it's, I don't know if yours is automatic start.
It has that option on there.
Right.
Yeah.
So automatic start. So usually, if you buy the right transfer switch, the minute the power goes, the transfer switch has an auxiliary, normally open contact, and that'll start your standby generator. And we did all that. He doesn't have it permanently connected.
Right.
But if he did have it permanently connected, that would save him if he was away for, like you said, as much as the load is. And I think most of them you'd probably get, you were right, 2 to 3 days if the load wasn't massive, if there was nobody home.
Yeah. So I think you got to consider, Gary, as you said, how often are you losing power, number one. do you have a situation where if you lose power and you got high groundwater, you're going to flood? That's an extra concern. And then secondly, how able are you to fire up a portable generator, or do you need the automatic one,
Yeah.
which is hands off really, but just pay
Now-
to get it maintained every year?
Do we want to kill this topic and go on an off-grid generator system as an option instead of a
I was
standby
thinking we
generator?
could do another hour on changing a ceiling fan, but if you really want to go there, okay.
Yeah. So that a lot of people don't know that that's an option, right? So most of the mainstream solar need 220 from the grid to actually work.
To work,
Well,
correct.
they sell off-grid.
So hold on. So
And
solar.
that's safe. That's for safety purposes.
Just-
you want to
right.
explain?
So just to be clear, this
It's a design
almost every
reason.
solar panel system that you see on somebody's roof will not work if the power's out.
Right.
Right.
Well,
Most.
of them.
Let's say
Yeah,
most,
99.9,
99.9, whatever.
Right.
So they will not work, and that's a shock to a lot of people, right? Like, well, I thought I had this because it's
Yeah.
going to help, and it's not going to help. But it's a safety reason, right? You don't want to be putting power into the grid through your house from your solar panels out to the street when there's some guy down the road trying to fix the power lines after a hurricane or whatever.
Even as a practical joke, it's not a good idea. Right.
Right. So they're designed
Could
to
hurt somebody.
automatically
But there
they
are-
shut themselves
right,
off from the
exactly.
grid so that can't happen.
But that's because it's normally connected to the grid. And I think what you're saying, Johnny, is that, well, you could have a system that's completely disconnected from the grid.
Correct. And then the only other component, obviously, you'd have to source that, and finding off-grid generators is not that simple. It's not super difficult, but it's not like you just call someone up and get it, number one. And then two, you would have to have a battery bank somewhere close to your system that houses that excess.
You can do that with a Tesla wall, right? If you've
Exactly.
got solar on your roof,
yeah.
they can be charging your batteries,
Yeah.
and then you would have
Exactly.
generator backup to that.
And very common
long
in the
does batteries
Caribbean
last?
and all the places where a lot of storms go through.
When you charge up a Tesla battery, how long will it last?
We're talking a Tesla battery in a car or a Tesla
the
wall?
Wall.
Well, the idea is it's always kept topped off.
Let's say the sun goes out. It's nighttime for 3 days.
Depends on how much battery
Talk to
you've
Mike.
purchased, right?
But it depends on the size of the battery. It depends on what you're doing. Are you using air conditioning in your house and turning everything on, or are you turning everything off, right? So you can't really say how long it'll last without knowing how you're using it.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, generally it's days, maybe a week or more. It's not hours and it's not months.
Right.
For the portable generators, I can tell you from my experience, there are a couple drawbacks, some negatives and limitations on there. First of all, because they are noisy, you have to be considerate, with your neighbors. Nobody wants to hear that thing running in the middle of the night. So
But then
your hours
again,
of operations are going to be limited.
If you don't have power, it's likely your neighbors don't either.
I could
Right.
tell you how I solved
So you
that.
just run an extension cord to your
That's
neighbor's
what
house,
you do. You run it to your neighbor's
plug
house.
in their freezer, and they're happy to hear you.
Yeah.
Right, but you have 360 neighbors, and you don't have that many extension.
Every
openings
couple
on your-
hours, you move it.
You
to
tell
the
them, hey,
next
buddy,
house."
next
Yeah.
year, it's your turn.
Yeah. Next outage. Yeah.
The other issue is gasoline, right? Because
Nope.
if you've got it in
Propane?
We went for the propane generator.
No, that's
so-
fine.
so great.
A lot of them are gasoline, and you're not running your generator every day or every week. Hopefully, not every month, and gas can get old. So you've got to put fuel stabilizer in it for any period of
Yes.
storage.
Yeah.
In fact, when you put your generator away, when the power comes back, add some fuel stabilizer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or just don't go there.
The other problems with it is the few times that we have had to use it is within severe storms. So you have to run extension cords out there, which means somewhere around the house there's got to be cracked door, cracked window, something to get it outside because you're not putting the portable unit in your home. And so because of that, it's during that heavy storm. So trying to make sure that the water's not getting in at the same time you're trying to get the extension cord out can be challenging.
And also not in your garage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but
correct.
also-
Lots of
Correct.
stories about that.
And another thing, obviously, most people will have to get an electrician, but most people will tell me, oh, you can't use a transfer switch on a portable generator, and you can. And maybe that's a investment that you'll make, and you don't have to do that.
We did that. That's what we did on mine. So
I have an eyeball on that all.
just pause for a second. Any questions from the audience? You guys have anything?
In the back? Oh, no. I don't think we have any yet.
One other limitation on the
Don't be
portable
shy.
generators.
Don't be shy.
They typically have the wheels on the one side and you tip it back and roll, which works pretty nice. Sometimes those wheels break, and when they do, then it's sometimes a challenge to move them. So
Okay, there's an aisle specifically for that in Home Depot, so don't worry. And they're really cheap, $5 a top.
I don't think that
I
happens
just use
very
my
often.
I just use my dolly.
Harbor Freight
Just kinda put it on
as
the
well.
dolly.
Yeah,
back.
exactly.
So it worked
Yeah.
out.
I'm getting to be a fan of Harbor Freight
A
lately.
lot of people are.
Yeah,
Trust me.
they're not a sponsor yet, but they could be.
Neither is Tesla.
Put in a bid.
It's good that you mentioned the battery.
Have you just found Harbor Freight? Because I've been using that for years.
I've known that it's around for years, but it's only the last maybe 2 or so that I've really been.
Or it probably took you a while to
Patronizing them.
convince yourself that it's not just cheap stuff and I could use it, right?
Yeah,
It's less
know.
expensive stuff.
They get some good stuff there. I bought a laser guide for a power saw there at Harbor Freight, but I just used it for a different purpose.
use it for
He
something
uses it for
Star
playing
Wars or
X-Wing.
something. Yeah, there you
Like
go.
Star Wars
Playing
X-Wing.
X-wing on the board. Yeah.
And then if you lose, you can saw the guy's arm off with the. Yeah, that's
But
good.
when I went there, the lady was asking what kind of saw I had, and I was trying to explain to her, well, I'm not really using it for my saw.
Any other questions on the generators?
Everybody's getting a. What are we getting? What is this?
Sweet tart rope.
This is a sweet tart rope.
It looks
So we're getting.
I'll take
Ray,
seconds.
We're getting a question. From
That's already
from a
on
call.
number 2.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we're getting a question, but I don't think we understand the
Yeah,
question.
why when I've
propane
said
for gas?
gasoline generator, you said, oh, propane's better. Why is propane better?
Oh, we're getting gasoline, right?
I'll tell you why
So-
he thinks it's better.
Go ahead, Gary.
Well, for one, you don't have to worry about your gas sitting there and getting all crap inside, and then you go to start and it doesn't start. But propane's more expensive and it burns quicker. So if you're going to actually use it, you have to replace it a lot quicker, and you have to keep having more tanks and fill them back up. So it could be better, but at the end of the day, it also could be worse.
The other
Could be.
thing about gasoline, if you spill it on your driveway, it will dissolve your driveway.
Yep.
I had to ride over it back and forth a few times today to, pack it back
it
down.
back
I don't think it's going to work.
Well, I'll tell you something else interesting that's always depending on how you look at it. In Sandy, in Perth Amboy, we were out with
Hurricane Sandy.
Hurricane Sandy. In this area,
Superstorm.
we were out for 3 days, and there was no. Gas. He turned the thing off.
Hey, turn me back on. That was a joke.
This is why we shouldn't be eating on air.
You guys can't hear me, can you?
Yes. So to your point,
you guys hear
Gary,
this?
there was no gas
I'll
available.
take thirds.
But there was propane available.
I'll give you the bag.
Okay.
So you got to always take that into
The
consideration.
other thing is there's tanks everywhere. Your neighbors all have propane tanks hooked up to their grills.
Yeah.
that
So
you
you got
could
more options.
borrow,
in
steal,
extreme
whatever,
situations,
and-
you
and
have a second option. let's
have
put it.
another
Those
And the other
positive-
thing, interesting to the caller, whoever asked, you could buy standby generators that take both of them, gas and propane.
I think mine is gas and
But
propane
you do
and
have
diesel.
to make some adjustments.
Nope. The one I have downstairs, it has a little switch on
Yep.
it, and it says gasoline
Yeah.
or propane,
Ooh,
and that's it.
fantastic.
Yep.
So the propane's there's positives and negatives.
Yeah.
So with propane, the typical size that folks have on their backyard grill is what, 19-pound tank?
Correct.
How many of those can you store before you, run afoul of some code official?
That's a very good question. I only know about propane storage for industrial, and you have to have it outside in a controlled environment. They sell these cages with locks, and then every year they make you pay $150 permit.
We had like
Other than that,
Well,
I don't really don't know.
we have
the-
like 6 of
the
them at our house.
ordinances.
People could take their kids out of the cage in the basement, maybe use that for the propane storage if they have a lot.
What's in these?
gotta be outside.
What's in these gummies?
Oh, that's right.
There can be some pros. It could be
edibles.
some pain.
I think there's something in these gummies that he's.
So, the next leading question here is, and I read about this a little bit. Can you, if you owned a Tesla, can you use it as a generator to produce power? Anybody want to start?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know that.
Adam's got a mouthful, but I think he wants to say yes. So I think I did.
I think you
read,
can.
I think I did read about that. I don't know what the power input output thing. I don't know if there's a cigarette lighter that you plug in with an adapter, and then you can plug in an extension cord. But I'm pretty sure.
Just like you can pull battery off your car, internal combustion engine car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't give any advice on that because that car is expensive.
As a general consumer, I would be concerned of does it void the warranty from the manufacturer?
I
I'd be concerned about
I
that.
could tell you one thing: the new commercial for the electric pickup truck from Ford does advertise that it has the
Yeah.
outlets in the back and stuff like that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
at least we could say that.
That's right.
But I've never seen that in any other commercials for a Tesla or anything like that.
Yeah, but you still got to be able to charge the Tesla at some point, right?
Yeah,
But in
I
an
don't know.
emergency, you could do it, right?
All I would say for whoever asked that is a pretty expensive home generator.
Yep. And we've got, I don't know if they'd buy it just as a generator. right? You know, does
keep it
anybody
in the
really
back.
I
hate
know a few people who would.
they dislike, Generac or Cummins enough to just go buy a Tesla and use that instead?
Yeah.
And then someone just goes out, revs the engine, and you're good. We have another question from the audience here. Let me, okay, way in the back. What is the best and easiest setup for a battery backup power system for a sump pump? And this is for a pool house.
It has
What
an
is the
AC
best,
plug.
Easiest.
Maybe it's a joke. Shouldn't pools be wet?
Yeah, we should leave the water in the pool, all right?
But it's a pool house.
Oh, it's the pool.
Oh, pool house.
Yeah,
Okay.
little store stuff. So we have a sump pump in our house. It's in the residential home, not necessarily the pool house, but ours has a backup battery in there. And we actually had it many, many years ago. I mean, it was installed. I think we've been in the house about 20 years. And when we first moved in, we had that sump pump installed. And I think it's actually never kicked on until I actually bought a dehumidifier. And the dehumidifier is tired of manually emptying it. So I put the hose from the dehumidifier into the little sump pit, and it goes off because of that reason. And in 20-some...
For some reason, like because there's water in there. It's his job.
now it's going off. But I never had an issue with it. Never had an issue with it.
I think with batteries, though,
It works great.
You can't rely on them indefinitely, right? It's going to run for days at most, and you need to maintain them. I don't know, depending on the battery you have, you may need to even replace them every several years.
One thing I do recommend if you have a sump pump that's battery backup is you can go to your local hardware store and you can buy these.
Oh wait, I'm sorry.
You can buy these moisture monitors, and it's nice because it's a square piece of plastic, maybe about the size of the cell phone, maybe about that thick, so it has some depth to it. And you just rest it where you want. It has two little monitors on the bottom. For the sump, we actually park it right next to it, and the monitor slides off. The little two electric pads, look silver in color, and we can dangle it down into the pump. So if it gets to a certain level, it'll go off. And every now and then, when I kind of don't believe they're working, I just kind of spritz it with a little water, and they work.
So if you read, they added to the question, pool house has no basement. So the question would be, where is the water coming from that you want to pump out? Correct.
Yeah, why wouldn't it just flow overland?
And then go away.
Into the pool.
So while they update that and give us more specifics,
Why doesn't this person call in?
so to whoever
Well, they're way in the back. Why don't you come on up?
to whoever's asking, you could buy a sump kit with battery backup. They come with usually 2 or 1 deep cell marine style batteries. They're the kind that have the little tops, little plastic tops that you could take out and put distilled water in. And usually, under normal use, those will last around 5 years. But they usually come with a kit. They'll come with a control box.
And they're expensive.
Yeah, they're not cheap. But obviously, if something's going to get damaged in your basement or in this pool house, I believe they're well worth it. I've installed a whole bunch of them to people in this town. It floods a lot. The sewer, it's an old town, and the sanitary and storm sewer are commingled. So when you have a large storm, people's sanitary actually back up. And for the ones who can keep up with a normal pump, it saves a lot. But we would need a little bit more information for a pool house that has no basement. We would want to know where the water is coming from, and so on and so forth.
When that happens with the commingled sanitary and storm sewer, I've heard a lot of strange stories, like maybe some backfeeding from the river because people say there's brown trout floating around in their basement.
Time out. We're ready.
You know?
Yes.
Yep, we have a caller.
This guy.
I'm not sure how that works.
No more sugar for Adam.
Caller, you there?
All right. Anybody there?
I don't know if they're endangered.
Oh, Adam's on the call.
Transmitting it.
Yeah, we have a caller.
We're having some technical difficulties here.
We,
Stevie, we're hearing the last 10 seconds of we're not hearing the
Caller, are you
yes,
there?
caller, how are you?
I think we have the wrong line here.
Hello.
Yes, hello, how are you?
We have multiple lines coming in right now.
We're having some technical difficulties here. I see. Is it?
So caller,
I
can you
know why
please
we're on
lower
delay.
the volume or put it on mute?
I think
I'm
our
trying to. Hold on a
producer is
second.
rewinding and trying to edit out something I said, maybe, and trying to bleep it out.
Steve, disconnected.
Everybody stop talking.
technical difficulties.
But really want to use the R word now.
What's the R word?
Realistic?
Return
Rarely?
I knew it.
I didn't say it.
All right, caller, are you there? You couldn't figure out how to.
No, but let's. You should put it because we hear it all the
So
time
the
in the
caller-
shows. If they have the show on in the background, it's going to cause feedback, so they need to turn it off.
I feel like I'm watching Howard Stern. You know what I say it all the time?
It's coming back in.
right.
Okay.
I think his question was, do you believe in God?
Yeah.
Caller.
That'd be a great question.
That's like a conference call nightmare there with the reverberation.
Oh,
So, thanks for calling. Who do we have on the show?
What's your name?
This is Stephen from Westchester.
Hey, Stephen from Westchester. Is it Westchester or in Pennsylvania or Westchester, New York?
What do you think?
I'm gonna go with
your
New York.
accent, New
I'll
York.
say Pennsylvania.
So, what can we do for you today, Stephen?
Oh, I'm just enjoying this generator conversation here.
What,
But I have
Oh,
a
no,
question.
honestly,
Who
come on.
Go
who
for it.
puts a sump pump in a pool house?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. Somebody else asked the question.
Well, this is
No, but
confidential.
I believe it has a genuine reason why they asked. It just didn't give us enough information.
I think it was a trick question.
Maybe it's sloping down, and the pool house is kind of like the
But it's like you
backyard
said,
is
then the
just-
water should just go into the.
Then you got
the
over
land.
that flow.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, if you've got grade, then yeah, you should be fine, right? You don't have to worry about
Yeah,
it.
but somebody's
Stephen,
thinking
can we send you over there to do an inspection and
Run
see
the
what's
flower
going on
beds?
with this pool house?
Absolutely. I'd love
it's
to see a
hot.
pool house.
Take a dip in the pool while you're at it.
Because I mean, one of the simplest
report
answers
back.
would be if it was on a slab, you'd put a French drain in it, dig a big hole in 1/4, put some gravel, put a
sump in,
your
basically.
sump in as a kit, which comes in a little black arrangement. What would you call it? Like was that vessel called? The black.
Like a,
It's a
it's a
The
sump,
housing,
It's a sump,
the housing,
sump.
yeah. The pit, but it comes all in one kit,
Yeah.
right? And
Home
then
Depot.
that's how you would do it.
Lowe's.
That would be the quickest answer to that person if they didn't call back.
So, Steve, do you have a sump? You don't have a sump in your pool house, I take it.
Well, there's quite a few houses around here that probably do have sump pumps in their pool houses
Did
because
they-
their pool house is about the size of my house.
Do they have any pool houses in their sump pumps? Any pool
Maybe
houses
this
in their
guy's
sumps?
pool house meant he had a house in a pool.
Got it.
Could be, right?
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks for calling, Steve.
Okay.
That was funny.
All right.
All right, Ray, you were supposed to have the.
We could do another lightning round while you get the next.
We could,
one.
yep, go for it.
Okay, believe in God?
Yes.
I
Yes.
thought this. No.
No.
No. Believe in the tooth fairy?
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Okay,
We're on the same page.
we are, Gary.
Keep going.
All right,
You got
we
another
have a
one?
question
Man.
we can't throw on the display.
Believe in fairies?
We got another question coming.
So this
Oh, I can't say that.
this person's question is: I recently started being more active, and I'm noticing extreme amounts of pain in my right knee when I'm resting in a sitting position or laying down.
You got to eat more, watch more television. Eventually, the knee pain will go away. I wouldn't recommend amputation, although that would work as well. We might have a little more constructive advice, though, from Gary.
Oh, not me. Go to Ed.
So I had
We're going to build up to Ed. You got your slightly more background than I do, and then the real answer is coming from Ed.
Well, I am a PT through the transitive property.
Oh, okay. Through the wife.
Yeah.
She is a very good physical therapist.
But I'm going to pass this off to Ed.
All right, Ed,
Okay.
take it away. You the man.
So, Stevie, we heard you read that question. Did the listeners right now on the live feed hear that, or should we repeat it?
You should repeat.
Yeah, they heard it. They
Okay,
heard
they
it.
heard it.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So I think in general, one of the things folks have to realize when they start an exercise program, a lot of people have their favorite activities, whether it be running or jogging, swimming.
Isn't that the same thing?
Well, it depends, on what they're doing.
No, running and jogging. Isn't that the same thing?
It
No,
could
running's
be.
faster,
It could be.
isn't it?
Jogging's slower, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever the activity is, what their favorite thing is, the important thing is to understand is to mix it up, right? So you don't have too many biomechanical stressors.
Right. So like jog your mind, run your mouth.
You
that
could do
kind of
that.
stuff. Yeah. Come on, that qualifies as a dad joke, does it not? Let's hear it. There we go.
There you go.
So the important thing to remember is to try and mix up the biomechanical stresses in the body, right? If you're doing the same thing constantly, you're going to be put at risk, right, for some kind of biomechanical issue. So that's the first thing. The other thing to understand is where your starting point is. So, for instance, if I'm someone maybe who I know I'm a little bit overweight, maybe the doctor has talked to me about a weight issue.
You're not. You look good.
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
I think you look okay, Ed.
Thank you. But hypothetically speaking,
But below the table, we can't tell.
He's got a huge fat ass.
but there would be nothing wrong with that if I did. But if you're someone who has, someone who's carrying some extra weight, now you're looking at choosing an activity. You can be choosing a weight-bearing activity, which will be putting a lot of weight through the lower extremities, through your legs, or you can start to begin with a non-weight-bearing activity, which isn't going to be bearing weight through the legs. And if you're someone who has a lot of weight that you have to lose, that choice is going to be even more important. You might be better off choosing to start with a non-weight-bearing activity, maybe sitting on a bicycle, a recumbent cycle, things of that nature where you're not putting weight through the legs.
So,
That'll make a
to be
difference.
fair, they could have knee problems because of biomechanical being a bike and you're not fitted properly. You're going to have knee problems. They could have knee
Absolutely.
problems because they're trying to run and they have the wrong shoes. I mean, there's so many different things going on.
There's so many different things. So all the things that
So
I'm saying
stop
is
by next Sunday
generalities.
and we'll do an analysis and figure it out.
You can, but generally speaking, right, if you do have a lot of weight to lose, maybe trying to start off with a non-weight bearing activity, or at least mix it in with the weight bearing activity and not just doing a weight bearing activity consistently every day.
So you're saying don't start with pickleball.
May not be the best choice, but it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. So we had the first official Attic Static pickleball game today before the show. So Gary, Ed,
I was.
and
I think I was undefeated today.
I don't think so.
You can play it singles?
No.
No, we're playing doubles.
It's
here.
always
We're
is
mixing
it
around.
always doubles?
No.
That you can
You
play
can play
singles, but
singles,
it's
okay.
commonly singles.
What do you call?
I think Gary lost 3 games.
What do you call the orbital? Is that what I call the
the elliptical?
yeah, the elliptical?
Yeah, the elliptical is pretty good, form of exercise, but that is weight bearing, right? Because you're standing on your feet.
Well, but it's not pounding.
Well,
It's
the
not
only
because of
reason
weight
why I
bearing.
say
No
it is
impact.
I suffer from all my joints, with pre-existing, genetic condition. But when I was at the gym, that's what I preferred.
Yeah,
I really liked it. And
Maybe
it
you
didn't
should
hurt.
have more joints. That's the problem. For the pain.
That's why I don't go to the gym anymore.
Yeah.
Because you have too many joints.
The other thing for the caller with that question, regarding the knee pain with the exercise, is to understand that you want to try and differentiate in terms of pain around a joint. Particularly with the knee, we're looking at pain either around the kneecap or on either side of the kneecap. If you're sitting and you kind of put your hand on your knee on either side of the kneecap, you'll kind of find 2 soft spots. If you have pain along that area, then that usually is indicative more of pain from the joint. Whereas some people will complain of pain, but it's more in the muscular meaty area on their thigh towards their knee or in the back of their calf. Sometimes that may be muscular soreness. So trying to differentiate that, is going to be important. And the last thing is, if it actually is coming from the joint, if you're looking to see a specialist, either your local physical therapist in your town or an orthopedic doctor would really give you the best answer. The primary care, they're very well intentioned, and they're there a lot of times to help you out, but see the specialist.
All right, we have another caller.
So
And they're gone.
Question for you. No pain, no gain. Should you always just try and push through it, or should you never try and push through it unless it's like typical muscle soreness that you get after the gym?
So that's a great question. A lot of times what I tell folks is to try and use rest as a monitor. So for instance, let's just say you're doing something with strengthening and you're doing a strengthening exercise. Maybe you're doing 3 sets of an exercise. Midway through the second set, you think to yourself, boy, this hurts. I'm not sure if this is good or bad. I'm having pain. So you stop and rest. And then after you rest, you kind of pick back up what you're doing, and it doesn't feel the same. It feels easier, not as painful, or maybe not pain at all. That's good because it changed with rest. As opposed to, same scenario, you're in your middle of the second set, I feel pain. Stop, you rest a couple minutes. As soon as you go right back to it, the first repetition right after the rest, it just feels exactly the same. That's usually an indicator you need to either change the weight you're doing, maybe you're doing something wrong, maybe you're doing something inappropriate for you individually. So that is a good indicator, in terms of generalities to try to differentiate.
Got it. Gary, question for you.
All right, we got somebody who's asking, how has your running workouts changed as you've gotten older? They've become harder. All right, next question. I could talk for hours. on
Harder
how it's
because you're
changed.
trying to do what you used to do
That's
back
part
then?
of it. There's honestly, I could probably talk about this for hours.
Don't do that.
I won't. But we have our caller, so we'll have
All
to
right.
come
Well, you
back.
got your wish. You're done with that one.
Yeah.
Come back to
All
that.
right,
question.
hello, caller. Hello.
Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hello.
Is this Steven?
This is Ray from Marlboro, New Jersey.
Hey, how you doing there, Ray?
Do you have a sump pump in your pool house?
No, actually, I have a question for Ed.
Yes, go ahead there, Ray. What can I help you out with?
Well, I've been sleeping on my side, and that shoulder now is starting to bother me. I know don't do that and sleep on the other shoulder, but that doesn't work. Is there an exercise I can do to kind of alleviate that pain?
So there is. The first thing you want to do is, if you're looking at, the biomechanical stresses in terms of your positioning, in this case, you're saying sleeping on your side, you're right, trying to sleep on the other side is going to be helpful. The other thing you can try and do is use pillows or rolled up towels to try and help you position when you're starting to fall asleep immediately. Everyone's going to move when they sleep, so it's only going to help you so long. I can't really tell, how much you're going to be moving around when you sleep, but using pillows to try and help position yourself is going to be key.
Where exactly would he put them if it's a shoulder thing?
So what you want to do is you want to put your arm in a position of neutral. And what neutral would mean is if you imagine your arm in a sling and then have your arm out about 3 or 4 inches away from your body. When you lay down, you want to have pillows or rolled up towels underneath your upper arm to support that. Otherwise, the arm would just kind of fall back.
Yeah, but it's his other arm that's bothering him.
Either one. Either this side or that's whichever one is bothering him.
So flip over.
Well, what'll happen is if he's on his back, right, it's going to be the arm that he's on. If you're going to be sleeping on that side that's painful, it may not help as much. So you're looking at trying to change position somehow, right? So instead of just going to the other side, laying your back may give you a little more stability because you're going to have more surface area that you're laying on versus just sleeping on the other side. On the other side, you're more likely to move around. So the back would be the way to try and go.
So
What
it sounded
about-
to me like his question was, I want to keep doing it, but I want to make the pain go away.
It's possible
Well-
the bed is too firm.
What if
That's a
he
possibility.
cut a shoulder-shaped hole out of his bed so that when he sleeps, he could put it in there and it's resting free and there's no less weight on it?
Well, a lot of times, and it's difficult to say, without
How
actually
about we
seeing you.
ask? He's on the call.
I did that. I cut the hole in the mattress, and now my arm falls asleep when I sleep because my arm's now dangling through the hole.
You weren't supposed to cut it all
Yeah,
the
not-
way through.
not
It's
all
supposed
the
to be
way.
just a divot.
Yeah. An indentation.
Yeah, think of a 9-iron. You're trying to hit 150 yards. Is that size divot is what you want? You don't want to go terribly deep.
I've seen his 9-iron. It's deep,
It doesn't go.
It's a-
It doesn't go 150 yards.
and it's a deep divot. Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the exercises, that you should do, it's going to be difficult
How do you
to
know
say.
our caller?
I was about to say, how did you know the caller?
It's Ray Lewis. It's him calling.
It's,
Adam's baffled.
Doesn't sound like a linebacker.
in terms of the specific exercise, Ray, it'll be difficult to say for your specific situation without actually doing a physical exam. But what you would want to do, right, is check with your medical provider, make sure you're clear for exercises, as long as they cleared you for exercises in general.
He's talking about his shoulder.
Plus,
Not
I hate
exercise, he's
the
talking about
Ravens.
sleeping.
Go
That's what-
Steelers.
That's what I'm talking about,
All right.
okay? So, yeah, so thanks for calling in, Ray, but make sure you check with your medical provider.
Okay.
And
Thank
the
you.
guy who sold you the bed. How do we know, Ed? How do we know
Yeah.
this isn't like the Princess and the Pea?
Could be. But what winds up happening is, in terms of the mattress, right, where you're going to be sitting there thinking, oh, it could be too hard, it could be too soft. We're kind of drawing conclusions. So typically when I'm actually working with a patient, we're looking at biomechanical stress that they're reporting to you and things that you're actually trying to put them through as you go through an examination and things that will change their symptoms.
Right. So you would ask him to bring the bed in with him next time. No?
No. What winds up happening is when we actually see them in person, we're actually trying to elicit a change, right? We're trying to make a change, right? A lot of times in therapy, one of the ways that we know to try and refer patients out when this is not an appropriate patient for therapy is I can't change anything, right? No matter what I do, he's like, no, it's the same. No, it's the same. No, it's the same. And so if I can't make a change, make it feel better or worse, then in my mind, that brings up a red flag.
When do you want to
Right.
make it feel worse?
Well, I don't want to, but I might do something that happens, right? So when you're troubleshooting, you're kind of going through things, and you think, oh, you know what? That's not, the direction I want to head in, but clearly it's responding to mechanical forces.
Got it.
Or
Right.
just, you could have a sadistic physical therapist who
Yeah.
just
I don't,
doesn't
possibility,
work.
but I
They
don't
know,
think
they know
that's the case.
exactly what to do, to worsen
I
it.
could tell you what solved mine. I had similar things like that. I bought a body pillow, not the one that's half, I don't know how to explain it, but it's both ways, the whole length of your body. That is best thing in the world. I love it.
Yeah, having a lot of different pillows, a lot of different towel rolls, kind of propping yourself
You
up
can prop your arm up, you can prop your leg up, you can put it in between your legs. It's the best thing.
is one of the best things, because to have someone say, to ask them, oh, is your mattress firm? Is it soft? Is always going to be subjective.
Subjective, yeah.
So a lot of times people go, oh, yeah, it's very firm compared to what? If you actually went to their house and touched it, maybe it's not. So that's going to be very subjective. So you kind of have to take that out of the equation, because you're right. I know you said it jokingly, but you can't have them bring it in. So we're looking at that as a factor that I can't really, affect a change or get a clear answer to. So looking at other factors. But the
Speaking of-
pillows
yeah.
and the body pillows and the towel rolls, they work out awesome. Because the more you can support, right, now you're taking that soft bed, firm bed kind of out of the equation, because you're making everything supported and more stable. And typically on your back, kind of like we were saying before, you have more surface area that you're laying on, and people tend to be a little bit more stable, but they're still going to move around when they sleep.
Yeah.
You mentioned clear answers, so I'm going to throw that back to Gary because we didn't get a
Wait, hold on.
clear answer on the running.
Is Ray from Marlboro still on the call?
Ray, still there?
No,
Thanks for calling in, Ray.
Take care.
Gary, I got a question for you on that running. What do you think about zone 2? I have found that when I get older, I realize the importance of zone 2.
What's
when you're
zone
running.
2?
What do you
Heart
think,
rate
Gary?
training.
Wait, say that again.
It's heart rate training. So there's technically five zones.
What are they?
1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
So it doesn't skip any of the numbers and go to a 6. It's
No,
just
it's right,
consistent.
Yeah.
So
What zone 1? What are they?
so
Low heart rate
try
up to
and
high
explain.
heart rate.
So 5 would be like is considered like above your anaerobic threshold. So it's like sprinting. So if you're sprinting, you're getting your heart rate up to number 5,
Max.
zone
Yeah.
5.
It's a higher number.
I don't necessarily go by zones because they're useless unless you know what your zones are.
Wait,
And-
why did you ask about zone 2?
Zone 2 is like an easy recovery type run. So it would be like you running with whey.
Wow.
Like
So
that.
all my life when I was running, I was running way too intense, because I would run so infrequently. When I ran, I figured,
But if you're
run-
going to run once or twice a week, that's okay.
Wait, you ran it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed, look, you run at the brink of a heart attack. If you don't puke when you hit the finish line, you didn't run hard enough.
That's what I've always done. But with a lot of research that I'm reading and just kind of analyzing what I'm doing for my own exercise, I realized zone 2 is pretty important. Or that should kind of be the
Well,
base.
you do need that. But I
Yeah.
think as it comes down to, as I said, most people think I'm going to train in these zones, and they don't know what their zones are. So if you've not had a test to know what your zones are, and you just say, well, my max is 220 minus my age, and then come up with these numbers, it's going to be wrong for most people. And the
How
other
do you
thing
get
is,
that test? How do you?
Yeah, without getting into the details, is there a way to define your zones?
there's different ways of doing it. Some watches will do it for you, and some you have to have the right information. Like if you do, some watches will give you a lactate threshold, which you have to wear a chest strap to do. And if you do that, because they give me my zones off, that's gonna be fairly accurate.
Does it have to be a Garmin watch?
It does not, and probably better not to be. But also, if you're gonna use wrist-based heart rate is okay, but I don't think it's great for doing a running activity, especially the faster you go, because a lot of people don't understand how that works.
I
Wrist-based.
agree with you.
So wait, your
I'm gonna explain.
heartbeat here is not,
not-
the same as
That's
here?
not a heartbeat. So I'll explain. When you wear a chest strap, it's reading EKG, so it's going to be accurate what your heart rate is. When you're wearing a wrist base, it's sending a light beam through your skin and trying to read blood flow. If you're not wearing it properly, like loose, it's going to be incorrect. But when you're running, the harder you're running and the more this moves, the more it's going to be off. So if you want to have an accurate heart rate while you are, we got bugs in the attic. If you want an accurate heart rate while you're running, you're better off having a chest strap.
I agree.
In my opinion, I don't trust wrist baits.
So just
or-
more accurate.
more accurate. It's going to be like 99.9% accurate instead of maybe 70%, 80%, 90%, depending on the day. Now, for all day activity, these wrist-based heart rates are great. But for activities, and the bigger the watch, the heavier the watch, the more it's going to move around.
Yeah, I worked with a cardiologist before. He told me the same thing. He felt
I'm
that-
as good as a cardiologist. I didn't even go to medical school. Of course.
You're better.
Better.
Cheaper.
That was way cheap, way more efficient.
I'm not cheaper. I'm less expensive.
Yeah, but a lot of research articles I read, same thing, right? They're talking about, kind of staying away from the wrist monitors and more in the chest straps, which is what I use. I think they're great. I think it's very well worth the investment. And like Gary said, there's a lot of different companies that make them, and it's worthwhile, right?
So back to the question, zone 2.
So zone 2 is basically a very easy recovery type of run.
Is it even a run though? If it's just above, is one resting pulse?
No, that would probably, I guess technically it's a zero.
So
Guess?
let's
I
get
don't
his
know.
Okay, so-
information.
so
I don't really
Your
go by zone,
two
so I
is
don't-
what number?
Yeah. So for me,
His zone 2, let him say what number it is.
yeah. So for me, it's up to 135 on my heart rate.
What is your max? And how do you know what your max is?
So for me, if you use the 220 minus your age,
It's not right for most people, so let's not use that.
It's not accurate. Right? So that's generally good for the general population who are going to do general exercise, who aren't really going to be into running that specifics, but just doing general exercise, like maybe our earlier caller with the knee problem. But if people are going to be very much into their exercise and they want to become exercise enthusiasts, if you Google online, modified Carvonin is a nice formula. It takes into consideration your resting heart rate.
Yes.
So that can be a bit better.
If you have,
It's
if
more
you know
accurate.
your max,
So-
Yes.
and you know your resting heart rate, you can get very accurate
Yes.
zones as
So
well.
using that formula.
135 beats per minute. I mean, there's some activity there. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, it's
that's
just not-
like a.
it's not hard.
Can I say? Is that like a marathon pace? What you
No.
run at? You
Well,
run
it
harder.
depends on the person.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
All right, so what's your number in a marathon?
For a marathon, like
just for
155, 160 for a marathon.
15, 20%.
But I think it's important. Like, I'll tell you some facts. You most people say 220 minus your age is your max heart rate. It's very different for many people. I have
Yes,
people
it
who
is.
are older than me who still have maximum heart rates over 200, and I know some people who are. And also doesn't mean doesn't mean a maximum heart rate 200 means you're a better runner, and doesn't mean if your maximum heart rate is 160 you're a worse runner. Because I have people who are also older than me and they've never had a maximum heart rate, even I think at 160. But they did a study many years ago. They took, so I think it was like the 1968 Olympics. They took 25, I think they were all runners, but we'll just say runners. They took, either way, they took athletes, took their maximum heart rate, and 25 years later, they took their maximum heart rate again. And based off the formula, they should all have been roughly 25 beats lower. But the athletes who continued running through those 25 years, their maximum heart rate dropped less than 5 beats, and the people who stopped dropped 25. So you can keep your maximum heart rate up higher if you continue exercising.
Right.
Another reason why exercise is good.
Yeah.
If you stop and then start again, can you recover what you've lost?
I
Do
don't
we
have an
know?
answer for that.
Yeah.
Why not?
The answer is yes.
The other great point about the running that you mentioned, Gary, is the caller from earlier with the knee pain. You know, there's actually a nice study that was done a couple years ago, and it was looking at sedentary population, what they considered to be moderate amount of running, right? In this case, it was less than 70 miles a week.
It's moderate.
Right?
That's moderate?
That's what they consider. And then they,
I'm moderate.
Yeah.
70.
It was a lot. It was a high threshold, right? It's like, what? It's like 10 miles a day, right? It's crazy, right?
I think 10
And
times, how many days in a week?
if you're an elite, you know, these ultra marathoners that are just, you know, putting in these crazy miles, right? They're looking at incidents of knee pain, right? Knee arthritis in particular. And they're saying that the ultra high volume of running, right, is actually more at risk, right, than the moderate runners, right? The sedentary is actually the highest risk, but they were pretty darn close for the
Wow.
ultra high. Yeah, because it's a lot of mileage, right? And that's kind of what I was alluding to in the beginning when that caller had called before about the exercise, is mixing it up and changing the mechanical stress, right, is going to be good. You know, there's going to be a lot of other factors in there, but it's always going to be helpful, right, because
So
you're changing the forces on the system.
I never got to really answer the question on how running has changed, training has changed since I've gotten older, or as we've gotten older.
Hey, why don't you answer that question?
I'm going to answer it in less than 1 day. I mean, I could talk about this for a day, but we'll talk about it less. The problem is, as you get older, it's not like you wake up one day and like, okay, my body's different. It's older. I cannot handle doing what I used to do a year or 2, 3 years ago. You just do it, and you're like, why do I feel so tired? Why is it taking me longer? Why am I not running as well, if that's what you're looking at? Or if you're going to the gym, why am I not as strong? And then you start realizing, well, I'm getting older. And you have to accept the fact that you are and say, I'm going to do less or change. So even like in the gym, I used to go 3 days a week. And then I was like, man, I'm feeling worse and worse and worse. So I changed it to 2 days. And I started getting stronger again. Running, there's only so many days now I can do a hard run. It just takes so much longer to recover. But it's not like you just know things don't feel right. What do I do? Let's try going less. And it's a very big balance of trying to figure out too little, too much. So it's taken me a while. And the older I get, the more I have to keep adjusting. But I mean, I've tried for over 10 years finding a coach who understands masters runners, and surprisingly, not many do.
I think your point about, you know, that recovery and rest is key. You know, it's so important. You know, and I think in a previous episode you had talked one time about during the run sometimes that you would solve, you know, problems. You know, you think about life issues and you come up with different things. And I have found that as I get older when I run, I really enjoy the mental discipline aspect much more now that I'm older, as opposed to the physical benefits. Before, when I was younger, I found that, man, I really want to run to relieve stress and, get my workout in. And now I feel like it's just mostly for me,
Like me
mental
time.
discipline.
Me
Yeah.
time.
So yeah, that's a good point, because whenever there's anything difficult, I don't necessarily do anything. It doesn't matter. Like, let's say you're going to dentist and you get a filling, and it's like, okay, I got 3 minutes. This is going to really hurt. It's like, I can do it. That's like, it's like I'm running a hard mile. It's like, I can handle this. So when you're doing these things, you're building up your pain tolerance. I mean, that's part of the thing of training. When you train, you're not training to be faster. You're training to be able to tolerate pain more.
Right. And a lot of research has shown, and I know we talked a little bit about it with our Outrunning Cancer episode, if you haven't seen it. But
Or listen to it, because we
or
didn't have
listen
that
to it.
video.
No, that was no video? Okay, listen to it. Thank you, Gary. That a lot of research recently has shown that one of the best things you can do for chronic pain and treating chronic pain is physical activity, right? Exercise is really one of the best things you can do for chronic pain.
Got it. All right, we're going to wrap up the stream tonight. Thanks everybody for watching and supporting the show. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you ever have any questions while we're offline, submit them on the website at ecstaticpod.com, or dial in next time to watch on YouTube, or find some other way to send us a question.
And next week, prize for our 100th caller. Yeah?
Absolutely. All right, that's a wrap.